Hello and welcome to Observations. And oh, what a week it was. I think we do have to talk a little bit about what's on the world's plate, because I'm just utterly amazed by what I have heard this week. It all began with right after the umpteenth millionth Islamic terrorist attack in Europe, and the Pope, who had just left and asked God to forgive those who perpetrated the Holocaust. He gets on board of his the Popal Express, and he says it is absolutely inappropriate to associate Islam with terrorism, and that Catholics have acted badly in the past, and therefore it's just wrong to associate particularly Islam with terrorism. He says because there's a problem with fundamentalists in every religion. And you just say, can this guy really be that stupid, that evil, that wrong? How in the world can a guy that is that wrong be believed as an emissary, a spokesperson for God by 1.2 billion people? How in the world can it be 1.2 billion people that stupid?
It tells you a lot about the 1.2 billion, doesn't it?
It sure as hell does.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I do have a lot of Mormon extremists coming around knocking on my door, asking me if I have yard work and stuff to do. It's pretty extreme.
It is true that there was, for a long period of time, Roman Catholics were terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they would, anybody that would in any way, shape, or form undermine their absolute draconian control over the people would be labeled a heretic, would be tortured, and then would be burned alive. I mean, there was no institution in human history that has been as bad as long as Roman Catholicism. But to suggest that just because we have been bad and we have acted like terrorists and we are scumbags, that it's unfair to associate Islam with terrorism is to say, let's not pay any attention to the fact that 99.9% of terrorist acts over the last 40 years have been perpetrated by fundamentalist Muslims.
Well, along that line of logic, then you should forgive the Nazis for their horrible terrorist acts. So.
It's beyond forgiving. What he is basically saying is there's no correlation there. They're not guilty of it. You don't need to forgive somebody that's not guilty of something, right?
Well, you can't assume that every.
Why should we forgive the? Yeah, we can forgive the. We shouldn't be worried about forgiving the Nazis for perpetrating the Holocaust because it never existed. That's the logic that he used. And then he called them fundamentalists. And if you call them fundamentalists, then that's the fundamental nature of the religion. I mean, you cannot have a more fundamentalist Catholic than the Pope himself.
Why? Hold on here. Why is it only when we talk religion that fundamental all of a sudden becomes something bad? In sports, if you know the fundamentals, you are a good player.
That's right.
If you are in business and you know the fundamentals of business, you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Right. Every fundamentalist Muslim is a terrorist. That's just a statement of fact. If you are a good Muslim, if you follow the orders of Allah and Muhammad, the example of Muhammad, then you're going to be a terrorist. That is just all there is to it. Khan's Khan was extraordinary. They picked this guy up whose son acted like an idiot and died in Iraq as if he's some sort of saint, and he comes on not to eulogize his son, but to besmirch Trump. And Trump isn't smart enough to give the simple reply. I would ask you a question. He was over there in Iraq. He told his comrades to go off to the side of the road and to stay put. And rather than join him and get out of harm's way, he walked right up to the vehicle that he knew was being driven by a suicide bomber and got blown to smithereens. And why is it that Trump or somebody in the media couldn't ask dear Khan, who killed your son?
There's another part of that I really love.
But But doesn't it prove that Trump's concern about Islamic terrorism is justified when they parade somebody at the Democratic convention whose son was murdered by an Allahu Akbar screaming fundamentalist Islamic terrorist?
You would think.
You would think.
Why wouldn't that be the first response out of your mouth? As opposed to, did Hillary write that speech for him?
Well, he should have said, "I rest my case."
Yeah, he should have said, "I rest my case." Who in the hell do you think killed his son?
Yeah. Mighty funny the North Vietnamese knew that. They would say, "Look at who killed you, who bombed you."
Yeah, they'd point to the insignias on those planes dropping napalm, and they said, "Who's your enemy? And who's down here with you?" Yeah, it's just astonishing that Hillary, who is the embodiment of evil, can lay a trap that big, that broad, that obvious for Trump, and that rather than leapfrogging over it in heroic fashion, he stumbles right into it. I'm astonished by it, and in the process, he went from being ahead of Hillary to a position that I don't think he can recover. I don't think there is a way for him to recover. I think he's now so far down, based on America's just recognition. That was so utterly unpresidential and so stupid. But I don't think there is a recovery for him. Not that it matters. And wasn't Hillary out stumping and said, you know what? She wanted to sound like Bernie Sanders because, Bernie was popular, saying we need to rape and plunder the 1%. If we only could steal everything the 1% has, then you would be liberated and rich and successful. That's what we need to do, is we need to punish those who are really successful, and that'll make you all more successful. And the people, clapped in praise. So Hillary gets up there and says, well, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we confiscate the wealth of the 1%, and we're going to tax the middle class all the more.
Yep, tax the middle class more.
And the people roared in their praise.
They loved it. They loved it, and she said it twice. She said she was going to tax the middle class more twice.
Even if she meant to say we're going to tax the wealthiest 1% more, who is the most taxed people, both in percentage and aggregate numbers now?
Middle class.
No.
Oh,
God, no. The middle class collectively pays a minority of taxes. No. Oh, no.
I always thought that was middle class.
No, the 1 to 5% are the most heavily taxed and pay the most aggregate in taxes and the highest percentage in taxes.
Well, taxes are a scam anyways.
Yeah, let's take away all of the incentive to be successful. And that'll really drive success.
You don't think that's not what they want? That's what they want. They want to take it because then we look to them.
Let's rob those who are out building things of all of their tools, and let's see if they continue to build.
Well, why would you invest if the higher the taxes? Everybody knows that.
Right.
It's not a hard call.
And then we had Erdogan over there in Turkey. Remember a couple of shows ago, we were on the air when the riot occurred, and I said, and everybody said, wow, there's been a coup there, and what's going to happen in Turkey? And I said, not a chance. I said, there's no chance that there was any thoughtful group of generals or anyone else in Turkey decided to perpetrate a coup, because they can count. They know that if they had done this 2 decades ago, they could have prevailed. But that they have no chance of prevailing now because 80% of Turkey's electorate, their population, are fundamentalist Muslims. Turkey has become a fundamentalist Islamic state. And that if the army or anyone tried to lead a coup now, all Erdogan would have to say is, Allahu Akbar, stand up to them. And accuse them of being un-Islamic, which is what the people did, and the coup is over in 15 minutes. And so there is only one explanation for what happened, because there is no chance that the military concocted this on their own, or that the more moderate Muslim cleric in America perpetrated it, is that the whole thing was a hoax by Erdogan himself to become a unquestioned dictator because he wants to become caliph of the Sunni Islamic world.
Well, he's put a bunch of journalists, generals, and anybody that opposed him, they're all in jail right now.
That is correct.
And
that is correct.
Didn't he have the quote?
And he's nationalized everything under him.
Yep. Isn't he quoted as saying that, like, this is fairly recently that he said this too, that it was like democracy and freedom have absolutely no value in this country. I'm pretty sure I'll have to try to look it up, but I'm pretty sure he said something like that.
He is the most rotten, despicable leader in the world today, and he made this entire thing up so that anyone that he thought, and because he's paranoid, evil is almost always paranoid, and they're evil, so they expect everybody else to be evil. That anybody that he thought might ever be able to rival him for power, hunted down and imprisoned and killed. Oh, he's such a sweetheart. And the world doesn't seem to understand it.
Here's his quote. Democracy, freedom, and rule of law. For us, these phrases have absolutely no value any longer. Those who stand on our side in the fight against terrorism are our friend. Those on the opposite side are our enemy. And then he proceeded to put a bunch of people in jail.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my oldest son, who was unfortunately been really misled in so many ways. A very bright young man, but misled in so many ways. When the Erdogan coup occurred, and I said, listen, Erdogan's a fundamentalist Muslim. The country is 80% fundamentalist. The secularists in the military would never have called for a coup because almost every general is already in jail. And the few that were left would know that there was no chance of succeeding under those circumstances. And he said, "Oh no, that Erdogan is one of the most liberal Islamic leaders, and that's why the fundamentalists in the military wanted to overthrow him." And you say, "My God, what rubbish are you reading?" How in the world could you be that misled? And he's well-read and bright. It's the news today is just plain old frightening.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
How much of what percentage you think of Iran is now fundamentalist?
The numbers.
Well, they were linked to a place where they had some common sense somewhere.
Yeah, the Islamic world as a whole had conducted a number of polls, and they have, like the USSR and Red China, they actually vote. It's just that they're not representative governments. Yeah, what choice? But with their votes and with the polls, it became obvious, starting about 8 or 9, 10 years ago, that the Islamic world had moved from a somewhat more moderate Islam, if you will, to fundamentalists, and that 75 to 80% of Muslims worldwide identified themselves with the most fundamentalist candidates and interpretations of Islam. And while Sunni and Shia Islam are different, and while there are virtually no polls allowed in the realm of Shia Islam, so it's more difficult to tell. They kept on, touting like Rouhani is a moderate and how the moderates were taking charge of Iran, of course, with the Ayatollahs, the most fundamentalist of all Muslims, and having an absolute lock grip on the country. And then of the previous president being a Holocaust-denying, Israel-eradicating madman, then they tout, well, Rouhani is proof that there's moderates. You know what? Rouhani is the guy that actually blazed the trail back for the Ayatollah. He was not only the person who brought the Ayatollah back, he was the head of the military during their war with Iraq. He is, he has a PhD in Islam. He's written like 20 books. He's a absolute ironclad fundamentalist. So I mean, my view is that that is probably the same as it is for the rest of the Islamic world. You know what happened today in the mythical realm called Palestine?
No, sir.
And the land of Fatah. The Fatah is in the midst of now campaigning against Hamas in the so-called West Bank.
Yeah, but
So Hamas, to appeal to the voters, knowing that again that 80% of Muslims throughout the world are fundamentalists, ran a series of social media promotions to compel good fundamentalist Muslims to support them over Hamas, and they led with this. They said, you know, unless you are absolutely ignorant or have no knowledge of history, then you cannot deny that Fatah has killed over 11,000 Israelis.
Well, what about
You should vote for us because we have killed 11,000 Israelis. And this is the moderate Islamic party that the United States wants to carve out a large swath of Israel to give them their own state? Wow, we are deserving of your vote because we've killed 11,000 Israelis. Then their next line out of their mouths were that, and we have sacrificed 180,000 martyrs doing so.
Well, they're not efficient.
unless the goal is to manufacture, yeah. But from their point of view, their goal is to manufacture martyrs.
Yeah.
So they managed to manufacture 15 martyrs for every Israeli killed. That's extraordinarily effective.
And did it go on their votes? That horror?
Oh, of course. They were proud of it. And I didn't see a single statement from the U.S. State Department or from the American media denouncing it. You know, because all of the uproar in America is over the $400 million bribe the Obama administration paid to Iran to get the prisoners back. And even as the negotiations were going on and the arrangements for the plane filled with cash, $700 million is a lot of cash, or $400 million is a lot of cash. So as the plane was loaded, filled with cash, was taking off, and it landed at the same time that the prisoners were being released, members of the Obama administration are on record as saying, you know, the Iranians are looking at this as a bribe, and it's going to look to the world as a bribe. And so, you know, we ought not have this plane land at the same time that these hostages are being released, or we're going to be accused of making a bribe. And now when it's called a bribe, the Obama leader says, oh, how could you dare say that? It wasn't a bribe. We would never engage in a bribe.
How does the government just go over and get 410?
Oh, the state. They went to the Treasury. They went to the bank. They went to the Treasury. You know, said Treasury, U.S. Treasury, go
they
print.
Just say load them up on pallets.
Load them up.
It was in Swiss francs as well. But,
it wasn't Swiss francs. Oh,
it was in Swiss francs. And then here's the other question.
So the U.S. government paid the Swiss francs. Oh God.
I don't have $400 million in my bank account, but I do have the ability just to transfer money over to a bank account. Does our government have that same thing? Where send them electronically $400 million.
You know, when we started the invasion of
Iraq,
of Iraq, I don't know if it was the invasion of Iraq. I think it was actually the invasion of Afghanistan. When we began the invasion of Afghanistan, George Bush had I think it was 10 not C-130s, C-7s, the C-17. C-17 is the two-engine cargo jet. He had 10 C-17s loaded with pallets of $100 bills.
I had read that, yeah.
And you wonder why there's no accountability. You wonder why the government over there is considered the most corrupt in the world.
My tax dollars hard at work, huh?
Oh. You know, I want to say that I have lost all compassion for Americans. That we have America has brought this on itself. It does not deserve compassion, and that I really just don't care anymore. But unfortunately, I have sons.
Mm-hmm.
And their lives are going to be made miserable by this. And so I guess it still saddens me, even though I know it's inevitable.
I'd like to agree with you, but for the same reasons, it's hard for me to. I'm still here at the moment, so people I care about are still here, so it makes it a little bit harder just to take the completely flat line of I don't care.
Yeah, it is. I found myself this morning kind of waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, between 4 and 6, just aggravated by this whole thing. My wife, she was pretty astute on something. The commercial that Hillary, who's outraising Trump something like 10-1 for this campaign, the commercial that she constantly runs, because she's got nothing to say of her own. I mean, her earlier ad was that as First Lady, that she's responsible for a child insurance program. First Lady, you have what legislative power do you have as First Lady of the United States? Zero. So her claim that she was responsible for a child insurance plan as First Lady is to be an egomaniac, delusional. And then the next one, and the only other one that I see her running, is the one where our children are listening, and they show a little boy and a little girl, and and Trump's making a fool of himself. He's talking about the woman that's bleeding through all of her orifices, and he's making contorted motions as he's talking about the handicapped man, and he says, I could lay out an F-bomb in the middle of a public square, and my popularity would go up, and say, we need to think about our children, and when we think about our next president, and all Trump would have to do to stop that is to bring us back to the Clinton White House, to a time when our children we're asking us as parents, so what is a blowjob? What is this all about? That here's her husband having sex with a 21-year-old intern in the Oval Office of the White House, and Hillary Clinton blaming the whole thing on a great right-wing conspiracy, and to have our children have to be exposed to perjury, sexual perversion in the White House of the United States, a man in power abusing an underling, and then to have his wife cover for him by blaming his behavior on somebody else, and she has the gall to run an ad criticizing Trump's words? What a hypocrite.
Well, have you seen the film on Clinton Cash?
No.
That's a documentary everybody ought to see. It was on... It's running on One American News, and that's the guy that wrote the book that was with her, and he talks about the...
you're talking about the amount of
dollars, and the funds and everything.
Yeah, you're talking about the money they've made. They left the White House broke, and now they've got funds of hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Exactly. And how they basically raped, what is it, the one with the hurricane down there in the islands. And, they didn't seem to care about those children.
No.
I mean, come on. She's such a hypocrite. It's not, I can't even look at her.
No, it's between she and her husband, they're the epitome of evil. Mm-hmm. And they're running against a man with absolutely no self-control.
No, he must be brain dead or something.
You know, if there was ever a time when the decision that we made, and I made this decision for two reasons. One is I got to know these people personally, and I then began to study what they had done. And I came to the conclusion that both sides, the Republicans and Democrats, were equally culpable, absolutely irresponsible, megalomaniacs, working against the people's interests. And at the same time, I was coming to know that the first requirement of the covenant is to walk away from your country so as to disassociate from this evil. And so I made the decision that I wasn't going to vote. I was going to be a critic of both sides to help people understand why they should disassociate from their government, why they shouldn't be patriotic or political. But if there ever was a time to recognize that Yahowah was right and that we should not engage in politics or patriotism, now's the time.
Mm-hmm.
God, and look at the mess we've made with our military.
Yeah.
What do you mean? They rebuild and fix things.
They're rebuilding what?
Yeah, they rebuild and fix things, right? That's what you do with the military, right?
You blow things up and fix them?
Yeah, they protect my freedoms, right?
By making people madder at you?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing protects me better, right?
You know, I can't imagine how you could do a better job of protecting America's freedom than creating the Islamic State by invading Iraq.
And arming it.
And then arming it. And then making them mad as hell by bombing them after you've armed them.
You know, I can't think that they would actually even know who America is if we didn't do that.
The Islamic State wouldn't exist. The Islamic State, there was absolutely no Islamic terrorism in Iraq at the time we invaded Iraq. Didn't exist. And the Islamic State grew expressly because they figured out that America couldn't count, that we were so unbelievably stupid that we overthrew Saddam Hussein and replaced the Saddam Hussein regime by Shiites and the Shiite Ayatollahs from Iran. And that worse than that, we then built an army for Iran to not only control Iraq, but for them to annihilate the Sunnis in Iraq. And so Abu Baghdadi came to the conclusion as an Islamic cleric that if he didn't come up with a way to defend Sunnis in Iraq, that there would be no Sunnis in Iraq because America had provided an army to the Shias, not in Iraq, but in Iran, to destroy them. And so the Islamic State is an Islamic fundamentalist organization of the Sunni persuasion that exists solely to defend Sunnis from Shia Islam. And that's how it began. And it used
from the Ba'ath Party too.
Well, yes, well, Baghdadi began by both terrorizing Shia Muslims and Americans as an equal opportunity enemy. Once America had left and the Shiites were using the American military that was left behind, the weapons left behind, to bombard places like Fallujah, then all Baghdadi had to do is create a military by bringing in all of the heads of the Ba'ath Party and the generals and Saddam Hussein's military and say, hey, let's collectively defend ourselves. And they did. And that's when the Islamic State became so effective. We made it. We armed it. We encouraged it. It's a result of our stupidity. And yet you have idiots like Trump saying, well, the solution is more bombs. Bomb them some more. Yeah, it worked out really well in Libya, didn't it? And in the Republican Party, the voice against the Trumpster is McCain, who never met a war he didn't like. Boy, we're lost as a people. Welcome back to Observations. Some time ago, before we left to discuss the really despicable history of the Christian New Testament in terms of its fidelity, its reliability, its accuracy. And we devoted a number of observation shows into Yahowah Radio to that. We had just begun our review of Yahowah, and we dove into Yahowah, Isaiah, hoping that we would make it all the way to chapter 14. Because by having studied the Mizmor and the Psalms, we came to recognize that Yahowah was expressly encouraging us to avoid being ensnarled in religion. And he spoke of the whore, of being a manifestation of Satan that was created to be alluring so as to seduce people into worshiping Satan as if he were God. And as we read further, God associated Pauline Christianity with this whore and with religion and with the plague of death and with Satan. So I knew that Yahowah made the connection between religion and the whore, and between religion and the whore and Babylon, and then between those three things and Satan. So religion, the whore, Babylon, and Satan over the first 14 chapters. Mm-hmm. So the goal was, rather than make claims that a connection, that the whore represents religion, that the whore is Satan, that Satan is Babylon, the living manifestation of Babylon, that the whore of Babylon is in fact Satan, and that these things are all a manifestation of religion, and particularly Christianity. I thought if we made our way through Yahowah, we could prove it. Now, as it turns out, of course, Yosha, to the extent that we can trust Revelation, in the last 3 or 4 chapters of Revelation, made this absolutely clear by identifying the beast and the whore and Satan and Babylon with that which grew out of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church. And so it's all there, but knowing how unreliable the Christian New Testament is, and recognizing that we have the entirety of the Yahowah scroll dating back to 300 BCE, that seemed like a much more credible place to make these connections, thinking, we'll probably learn a lot along the way. Mm-hmm. So that's why we dove into it. And what we're going to find is that the entirety of the first 2 chapters, essentially from beginning to end, is Yahowah bemoaning the pervasive and debilitating nature of religion throughout Israel and Yehudah, and how religion has been so caustic to the relationship that he desired with his people, that ultimately by the first verse of the 3rd chapter of Yahowah, God is saying that at this point, well, pay attention. I'm going to withhold my provision for life. And so we're confronted by a very profound statement there, and at that point, I think those of you who have listened to this program over a period of time know that for the last month I have been devoted myself to understanding precisely what God has provided as the substance of life, to support life, and to demonstrate why it had been withheld. And that is becoming the 9th and 10th chapters of Observations for Our Time. But let's now go back to the beginning of Yahowah, Isaiah. And let's start in chapter 1. We'll catch up to where we were before we took the detour into the research that demonstrates that the Christian New Testament isn't even remotely reliable. This is how it begins. The revealing communication of Yashayahu, meaning salvation, is from Yahowah, son of Amos, meaning the trustworthy and steadfast, whereby beneficially he compiled and revealed a written prophetic record of the covenant relationship concerning Yahudah, means related to Yah, and Jerusalem, the source from which teaching and guidance regarding reconciliation and restoration flow. In the days of Uzziah, which means boldness and empowerment are from Yah, Yotham, Yah was perfect, Akaz, he has grasped hold, and Yakiz Yah, strengthened by Yahweh, rulers of Yahudah, the beloved of Yahweh. Well, there's a lot there. We have been over all this before, but one thing I did not mention in the previous times that we went over it, how in the world could Yotham mean Yahweh is perfect if the Wah in Yahweh wasn't pronounced as an O?
Good point.
It would be impossible, wouldn't it? It's just like Yoel, Yahweh is God. There are some 30 or 40 Hebrew names that are contractions of Yahweh and some other word that have been contracted to Yo and that word. And the only way that that would make any sense is that if it were Yahuwah as opposed to Yahuwah or just Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're getting the El. You know, a great example would be Elohim. If you look up El and Elohim, you will not see a Wah in either El or Elohim. So how would Elohim have the O sound if there's no Wah there? Because it's a plural contraction of Eloah, and Eloah has the Wah creating the O sound. Yep. So anyway, it's interesting that if you'll take the time, Yahowah provides Yahowah provide overwhelming evidence that for everything that's important, and sharing His name is amongst the most important things to Him. His name being communicated, His name being summoned, is so important to Him that He provides the instruction for it. You know, I was thinking as I was just driving home, I had a appointment out today, and I was coming back home, and I was thinking about someone who had written me recently, and was all flabbergasted about leaving the Christian comfort of constantly praying to God. And he says, you write constantly that God never asks us to pray, and that, you don't pray to Him. So what are we supposed to do? And I was just thinking about how utterly ridiculous the Christian position is. I've got the opportunity to listen to the Creator of the universe, to the author of life, to the most interesting, inspiring individual in the universe. I've got the opportunity to listen to Him, or He can listen to me. Which one of those sounds to you like it might be more?
Never mind. Yes, what does that mean? Help me to understand.
But even in that regard,
I know.
Even in that regard, do you think, Kirk, that He needs you to say, help me understand, when you're sitting there looking at a word in the midst of his testimony, and you're trying to understand it? Do you think at that point that you telling Him, I'd really like to understand this, do you think that somehow adds to His understanding or incentive?
No. Okay. No. Just shut up and listen. When I grew up, all the spiritual,
and by the way, when
to the guy on the mountaintop and listen to him. Christians don't do that.
Yeah.
Even they understand. There's the wise man. Go listen to the wise man.
Right. I find that I've been afforded, and I'm not unique in this regard. You're afforded it too. The opportunity to listen to the testimony of God, and I find Him brilliant. I find Him completely entertaining. Sometimes He's funny. Sometimes He's uplifting. Sometimes what He has to say, tug at your heartstrings.
Yeah.
And, I'm prepared to listen to him for all eternity. And, and I'm quite content if if the entire contribution that I have to our dialogue is, wow. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, wow. Oh, wow, now I get it. If I am limited to a wow, and just don't drool all over myself,
I just got enough.
I am going to be content.
It's a lot of wows.
Yeah, it's a lot of wows. And so, anyway, that's what we're doing here is we're listening to God. Guess what the next, I love to go off on these rants, and I love to come back with God affirming what we just said. The next word is listen. Spiritual realm, and choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond. Material realm, because Yahowah has spoken. Now, I really want to listen to what he has to say here. I have a choice. You have a choice. We can blabber on, or we can listen to what he has to say. What he has to say next is as important as anything that has ever been said. I reared my children, lifting them up, helping them grow, and enabling them to be great. And I raised them, taking them to a higher place. But they have actually rebelled against me.
Well, that's sad. That is.
Well, it's both sad and wonderfully uplifting.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the creator of the universe, the author of life, the biggest of the big. I mean, this is the most extraordinary individual in the universe, multiplied by infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity. And he is saying that rather than manipulating people, rather than doing something that ought to somehow impress us, he's saying, I took the time that here's the thing that I most want you to know. I reared my children.
I told them, yeah.
I lifted them up. Oh, my God, this idea of getting down on our knees to worship God and lift him up and praise, God damn Christianity. Muslims bowing, prostrating themselves in prayer to a God who says, no, I lifted my children up. That'd be as stupid as a child bowing down and prostrating themselves to their parents. What are you trying to turn God into?
Yeah.
Oh, an insecure, sadistic monster? But here's God saying that the single most important thing to him, I raised my children. I lifted them up. I reared them. I helped them grow. I enabled them to be great, taking them to a higher place. This is the God of the Torah. This is the real God. This is Yahowah. This is the individual who conceived and who embodies and who conveyed and who owns the covenant. This is what he's offering. And by the way, it's all that he's offering. He's not offering to save us.
No.
He's offering to lift us up, to raise us, to rear us, to help us grow.
Exponentially.
Now, right. Exponentially, take us to a higher place. When we as parents help our children grow, then we'll protect them, sure. And as a parent, Yahowah's going to protect us. That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
But it's a byproduct of rearing us. It's a byproduct of taking us to a higher place. It's a byproduct of rearing us, of treating us like his children. So I don't know what you could have God say that should resonate more than that. And by the way, is there a family religion? You know, when my wife and I had 2 kids, did we say, okay, here's the religion of our family?
I wouldn't use that word. I mean, there's
no such thing as a religion of a family.
No.
We didn't say, here's the politics of our family.
No.
We didn't say, here's the military of our family. Here's the patriotism of our family. We didn't even say, here are the laws of our family.
No.
We said, when our children were old enough to understand, we say, we do have some rules. We have some conditions.
Oh, we have to live together.
Yeah, to live together, here's some conditions. If you decide to do drugs, well, we'll still love you. And you're not going to live here. You're not going to live here in this house.
I'm bringing it here.
Right. If you get involved in serious, violent criminal behavior, you're not going to bring it home here. There's just things that you're not going to do and live here in this home. You're not going to use vulgar language or threaten other family members. So anyway, God is saying, I established a home. I mean, he didn't say I established a religion. He didn't say, the first thing, I established my religion, and I established my laws. And you were subjected to my laws, and you didn't obey my laws, and I established my religion, and you weren't religious enough. And that's what that's the Christian
you can't find it,
view.
Torah.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. And here's God saying exactly the opposite. He's not saying he established any laws. He didn't say the people failed to obey his laws.
No.
He didn't say that he created a religion and the people weren't religious enough. He didn't say the people failed to place their faith in him.
No.
No. He said that I was your father, and you rejected me.
So you mean the first thing that he said to Adam wasn't, hey, believe in me? And Adam looked at him and was like, okay.
Say what?
Okay. Who are you? I don't have a name. Just believe in me, all right?
Or use any name you wish.
Use any name you wish. Okay. Dodo Bird. I like Dodo Bird.
You will call me the Lord. That's what he said, right?
Oh yeah, I am your master.
Yeah.
Obey me.
Down. Let's get the right.
Yeah. So let's establish the religion of Eden, and let's establish the laws of Eden.
Do not look at me when you talk. You just
He just said, "Yeah, I have some rules. You want to live here? Then I've given you all the stuff you can eat and all the stuff you can do, but there's a rule. Don't go and eat from that tree."
No, that's the bad nutrition there. Don't eat the bad.
Yeah, actually, it's actually not necessarily so. It was the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And so what it did is they
couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it gave individuals, the first was Yahowah and Adam, but it gave them the ability to choose between those things, to use one or the other. And of course, the flood had to occur because man had chosen to be evil. Yeah. And knew how to be evil now. I mean, really knew how.
Oh, they worked at it.
Yeah, they worked at it.
They developed it.
Yeah. So it's just a stunningly important frame of reference. I always say that frame of reference is the single most important part of understanding. I probably say that context is the single most important part of understanding, but even before context is frame of reference. And it is why I don't think you should even attempt to translate Yahowah's testimony until you come to know him well enough so that your frame of reference is grounded in the Torah, that your frame of reference is as consistent with Yahowah's as you can be.
Every time I read a translation, a typical English translation, King James, New American Standard, that glares at me constantly. That they're looking at the exact same Hebrew word that I'm looking at. They're looking at the exact same
Yeah, actually, the King James.
They go off on a tangent. I don't.
Yeah, that's really not.
Obviously, don't know Yah.
Yeah, that's not completely. That's not
stuff about Yahweh.
Right, that's not completely true. It was whoever translated.
It's done on purpose, but
no. I'm going to say that they're not looking at the same words, and the reason they're not looking at the same words is that there is no English translation of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms other than the Masoretic translation I found in the Jewish Publication Society that is actually a translation of the Hebrew words.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. I mean, English translations began as Greek translations of the Torah, Navi, and Mizmor, forming the Septuagint. And then the Septuagint, which were not very good translations, in fact, very poor translations. And by those who did not have the right frame of reference. This was done, during that period where Israel was torn apart between the religious zealots and the social liberals, and they were embodying many Greek ideals, and the Greek ideals really were as poisonous for them as were their religious rabbinical fundamentalism, which was coming at this time. And so it was these two things that in Alexandria, Egypt, created a jaundiced perspective to translate the Hebrew and the Torah, Navi, and Mizmor into Greek, a language ill-suited to convey the spiritual insights from Yahowah. And so they're the ones that looked at the same words and with an improper perspective misconveyed them. But then that's only the start, because
they can look at these same translators that produce these products. They could certainly look at the same thing you and I look at.
They could to correct what they have, because they got to what they have by then failing to recognize that the Septuagint was a really lousy translation of the Hebrew, and that the Septuagint was very poorly maintained, unlike the Hebrew versions of the same text, unreliably maintained, an absolute disaster. And that it then was translated into Old Latin, and then the Old Latin became very free and full of disparities, and that Jerome, Erroneous is our new name for him, wrote the Pope and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend all of these divergent variations of Old Latin into one text. We'll burn all the old texts, and we'll claim that the one resulting text is the perfect Word of God. And of course, now it was like 4 translations and 8 copyists removed from the original text, and another language wholly ill-suited to convey Yahowah's meaning. And then the Septuagint, over 1,000 years later, was translated into Anglo-Saxon. Not the Hebrew, not even the Greek, but not even the Old Latin, but the Vulgate was translated into Anglo-Saxon, and from Wycliffe's first variation, the King James was a revision 6 times over of that first one, and without anybody paying any attention along the way at all to Hebrew. And so they're not looking at the same words. Now, someone like the New Living Translation, they would be without excuse.
Yeah.
Because they have a copy of the Codex Leningratus, which is the best copy we have of the Masoretic text. They have full publications down of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they have all of the tools that we have available to us in terms of dictionaries and lexicons and word study devices. There's no part that we're doing that they couldn't do, but they all recognize that if they did what we're doing, they wouldn't sell anything. Yeah, they wouldn't even be employed. Yeah, it gets back to the Falwell story, exactly. But it's amazing that they don't get it, and that the translations can be so different. So then God, in the third statement, and recognize that I'm only giving references to chapter and verse, because it's just so somebody can go and verify this for themselves and check it, because there are no chapter and verse in God's parlance, and that is because that when you break things down into chapter and verse, and you don't recognize the contextual relationship between things in a discussion, you have no hope of being able to translate it correctly. And that's one of the great affirmations. Is we began this program by talking about the work that you were doing on Bereshith 6:5 and 6:6, and how 6:5 is so butchered in every English translation, and all they would have had to have done to not make the mistake that they all did is to consider what follows in 6:6 and recognize that it's all one discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't do it. So this is what follows, and it is related to what he just said. The rebellion against God as Father. He says a cow. And you have to understand, now you could just leave it as cow, but if you just leave it as cow, you're going to miss the entire meaning here. Because the Hebrew language was conceived by God for a specific purpose, which was to convey the nature of the covenant relationship so that we could understand it and act upon it. And so every word was specifically designed by him for this purpose. So you've got to look at what does the Hebrew word cow also mean that's going to shed light on this and make sure you convey it. Because if you don't convey it, you're going to think he's talking about a bovine. He ain't talking about a cow here. He's using the cow as a symbol of something, and the symbolism is the following. One who looks, sees what's around him, and views the world from the proper perspective, and is aware of and recognizes his Creator, and the one who gave birth to him. So he's saying a cow, which in the Hebrew word for cow means one who is observant,
Mm-hmm.
recognizes his Creator. You know, even a cow, because he is observant, recognizes his Creator. And an ass, a stubborn domestic beast of burden, his Lord. You know, if you're an ass, you know your Lord.
You're a jackass.
If you're a jackass, you know your Lord. Unfortunately, your Lord ain't God. But, you know, it's a beautiful thing that he associates the cow, the cow, the source of nurturing, the source of nurturing milk, the cow, the animal with a pleasant disposition who is observant of the world around it, recognizes its Creator. But the ass, the stubborn, belligerent, aggressive beast of burden, yeah, what it knows is its Lord. Yisrael, individuals who struggle and fight with God, does not know and remains unaware. My people have failed to consider the connection and thus do not understand. Still don't. And by the way, that is the pathway to understanding. Connections.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I began the show and I was talking about what Trump had to say to negate, in fact, to turn the 4 minutes of Khan into a triumph for Trump as opposed to the thing that sunk Trump. And all he would have to say is, thank you very much for proving my point. I'm sad that you've lost your son. But it ever dawned on you who killed him?
I would ask who sent him into these wars.
Yeah, you could do, but of course he would have been sent into the wars by the Bushes, and so that would not have been politically expedient.
But it starts back from the whole administration.
Right.
After administration, got us in this mess, and then you fight these stupid wars. And
I know, but Trump wants to be. What you're saying is would appeal to enlightened people who understand that the first condition of the covenant is to walk away from your country. But just for his own cause.
His own page, yeah.
All he had to do is to say, thank you for proving my point, Mr. Khan. Well, I'm saddened for your loss. Didn't it ever dawn on you that your son was killed by a fundamentalist Muslim?
Yeah. Even more pointed.